a deserted 20-lane highway that crosses a deserted capital, a hotel that has been under construction for over 30 years, or a failed 12 million euro roller coaster. Sit back and relax. Today, we are going to show you 7 of the most useless, huge projects in the world. S&S, Sansei Technologies, is an American company specialized in the design and construction of all kinds of rides. But what makes this American giant special is its immense know-how in the creation of pneumatic roller coasters that work with gas or air under pressure. It is thus to remain faithful to its trademark, which is none other than the innovation, that the leaders and the engineers of this company do not cease creating and defying all the laws of physics to give life to increasingly scary rides. And so they have succeeded in bluffing and stunning roller coaster enthusiasts all over the world, thanks in particular to Batman's Ride in the United States, Mumbo Jumbo in England, Green Lantern in Australia, and the Crazy Bird in China. But S&S Sansei and its engineers wanted to go even further in their creative delirium with the Ring Racer in Nuremberg, Germany. On paper, this Formula One themed roller coaster was supposed to be the fastest and most spectacular in the world. But the reality was quite different. The opening of this crazy project was first delayed several times before finally opening its doors in 2009. Unfortunately, the first visitors of this exceptional ride witnessed a succession of explosions that caused injuries to 7 people, shattered several windows in the nearby buildings of the amusement park, and caused enormous damage to the structure of the ride. So 5 years after the failed launch and after spending more than 12.3 million euros, the Ring Racer has finally become a safe and functional ride. However, S&S had to close it down because it turned out that it would never be profitable. So this grandiose project that was supposed to be the pride of S&S Sansei became one of the most useless completed projects in the world and the ugly duckling of the American giant. Still, even if the Ring Racer project was a succession of failures and a huge financial drain, S&S Sansei is still thriving thanks to the hundreds of rides it designs all over the world, and now, at least, with this huge German flop, the leaders of this company now have the manual of all the things you should not do when starting a grandiose project. If you think it's silly and absurd that it took S&S Sansei more than 5 years and 12 million euros of losses before they stopped their useless mega project Ring Racer, you should know that there is an equally huge project that has been in the works since 1987. It's so incredible that you can't wait for more details. So we headed to Pyongyang, the North Korean capital. On the few images that come from this mysterious city, you have certainly already seen this huge tower. Well, it is precisely this tower that we are talking about. Indeed, this skyscraper, in the shape of a pyramid, which was originally supposed to be a hotel with more than 3,000 rooms and 5 panoramic restaurants, and whose construction started in 1987, never opened its doors. However, in 1992, the building had already reached its planned height, except that it was a hollow concrete block with no windows. And this situation continued for 16 years until 2008, when its facade was covered with glass and sheet panels at the cost of $180 million. And since then, every year there are rumors that this skyscraper named Rongyang Hotel is about to open its doors. Unfortunately, in 2012, photos of the interior of this huge building leaked, and what they reveal is quite shocking. As you can see, more than 2 decades after the launch of this grandiose project, the building is almost hollow and little work has been done on the inside. But this hasn't stopped the government of dictator Kim Jong-un from investing even more money into this purely useless project by fitting it with LED lights in 2018. Today, while this project has cost hundreds of millions of dollars over more than 30 years, it is nothing more or less than a kind of faceted pyramid. Seeing so much money and energy wasted on a project that serves absolutely no purpose is shocking, but knowing the country and the person who runs it, one must believe that such stubbornness in pursuing a dream doomed to failure is not so surprising. Let's hope that one day the situation will change in North Korea and that this hotel will finally open its doors to tourists from all over the world. Who says dog says cat, and who says North Korea says United States. And when it comes to useless grandiose projects, the American government is also dragging several shameful pots. As in 2002, when the federal government wanted to find a sustainable solution to the treatment of nuclear waste. And instead of maintaining the status quo in which each of the American states independently manages its radioactive waste by storing it in its own territory, the government had the very bad idea of creating a national nuclear waste dump in the Yucca Mountain in Nevada. Even though this pharaonic project was approved by the Congress and a budget of hundreds of millions of dollars was allocated to it, and even though its construction was almost completed, It could never see the light of day because of the strong protests of the Nevadans, who were opposed to seeing their land turn into the nuclear dump of the whole country. This huge, useless, and controversial project, which has cost the US government almost $96 billion, has become a shameful hot potato that presidents have passed on from Obama to Trump and now to Biden, who has declared that it is not his government that will inaugurate the Yucca Mountain project. So this is a matter to follow in 4 years after Biden's quadrennium. A futuristic, intelligent, eco-friendly, offshore residential city built on 4 artificial islands with an autonomous forest ecosystem. It sounds like I've set the scene for a science fiction movie, but this crazy project called Forest City is real. Now you're thinking that this whole story is so idyllic that there must be a but somewhere that you'd like me to elaborate. Well, before I tell you what's wrong with this project, let's set the scene first. Forest City is located in Malaysian waters, in a very ecologically sensitive area because it has protected seagrass meadows as well as the Pulai River Mangrove Forest Reserve. However, it is not at all the ecological aspect that will make this huge project a monumental flop, but rather a succession of chaotic events. For example, even though the project was not completed in its entirety, several cracks appeared all over the roads and large buildings of Forest City. Second, some of the project's investors have been accused of corruption. Finally, the residents in Forest City were originally intended for wealthy Chinese clientele, but in the meantime, relations between Malaysia and China have deteriorated. This led the Malaysian government to prohibit the Chinese from buying property in Malaysia, and the Chinese government has capped the spending of its citizens abroad. But it was the COVID-19 pandemic that gave the coup de grace to this unnecessarily grandiose project. It's so sad to see a project as ambitious and futuristic as Forest City go up in smoke. But what saddens you the most is that the $100 billion it cost could have changed the lives of millions of people in need. You must have heard of the Hubble Space Telescope, the telescope that has been orbiting the Earth since 1990 and has been adding to our knowledge of the universe ever since. What you may not know, however, is that the famous Hubble has an end-of-life planned in a few years. But is there an alternative to Hubble's retirement? This is truly the question you are asking yourself. Well, as you probably know, NASA engineers have always made sure to keep a step ahead, and on this occasion, they have been more than forward-thinking. Because in 1989, even before Hubble was put into orbit, they had already started to study the project of its successor. But it wasn't until 2009 that the actual construction of the James Webb began, the revolutionary telescope that is supposed to peer into the far corners of the universe, study the atmospheres of Earth-like exoplanets, and more. And while it was initially supposed to cost $4 billion for a launch in June 2014, by early December 2021, the James Webb Telescope project had already cost NASA $9.7 billion, and it was still not operational. So it is since 2014 that this mega project is considered by the most skeptical as a huge unnecessary failure. But on December 24, 2021, this situation changed as finally James Webb was launched into space. However, I may disappoint you slightly because nothing is yet done for this huge project. We still have to wait 6 long months for the James Webb Telescope to reach its final destination and become operational. So all you have to do is cross your fingers and pray that this mega project will finally become useful and teach us more about the vast universe that surrounds us. This is the story of several tens of thousands of Chinese people from the Hebei province who wanted to improve their living conditions and invested in housing in the huge Xiangyun real estate project, a city of more than 7 square kilometers nicknamed Venice of the East, which was to have several theme parks, luxury hotels, but above all, high-end, low-density ecological residences in a very overcrowded area. But in 2014, as the dream of a better future for all those people who put all their savings into the city of Xiangyun started to become reality, the entrepreneur behind this pharaonic project was accused of fraud, and with the fall in real estate prices, he accumulated billions of debts and ended up closing down. Today, this ambitious and gigantic real estate project has become one of the most useless in the world. This city was supposed to be the Venice of the East, has turned into a ghost town, and since then, tens of thousands of families who had invested their savings in it are not allowed to settle there. But as long as this case is still before the courts, all these families who dream of seeing one day their homes completed have not lost hope and aspire to a happy ending. All the huge projects that I've shown you so far, although they are useless, all started with a good intention. This is not at all the case of this gargantuan, useless, and deserted 20-lane highway that crosses Naypyidaw, the equally deserted capital of Myanmar, the former Burma. Curious as you are, Now you want to know everything about this road and especially the reason why it was built. But first of all, you must know that before 2005, Rangoon was the capital of the country, except that the military junta in power, on the advice of an astrologer, decided that the capital had to be in the center of the country to better face possible coups. This is how the megalomaniac military dictator at the head of Burma raised a virgin rainforest to build his new capital. It is thus in an act of pure and simple vanity that this road, which is one of the most disproportionate in the world, and this city, which is 6 times the size of New York, came into being. Today, although official Myanmar sources claim that this new capital has more than 1 million inhabitants, the pictures you see show rather a ghost town with a gigantic deserted road. Now that you know everything about this useless mega project that was born out of a completely unusual superstition, you feel sorry for the Burmese people who live in poverty under a dictatorship that did not hesitate to spend $4 billion on a whim. Unfortunately, neither you nor I can do anything for them, except hope that one day the situation will improve for the Burmese people, as well as for all other people who live under the boot of crazy dictators. These were 7 of the most useless huge projects in the world. Tell us in the comments which one surprised you the most. And if you like this video, don't forget to put a blue thumb, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all the notifications and not miss anything of our next contents.